This is Dirshu Mishnah Berurah, going kvittel to everyone. I know we're still a drop behind, but Baruch Hashem, only a little bit. Today we're in the middle of the Ramah in Simin Nun Gimel Sif 25b. And says the Ramah, Shliach Sibur, Shehu Sheichet Ubaydik. We have a Shliach Sibur, a jack of all trades. He's also the Sheichet, he shechs the animals, Ubaydik, he's one that checks to make sure they're kosher. Lo Yisrael Babigadim Atzayin Masrichim. He's not allowed to daven in garments that are soiled and smelly. But he doesn't want to change. If he doesn't want to change at the time of davening to daven, we tell him, I'm sorry, you cannot be Shliach Sibur in your current state, and we remove him from his post. If we have a Shliach Sibur, he's not davening appropriately, he's singing the wrong songs, we protest him not to do that. That's also a reason to be ma'avir. So even though until now we've learned extensively many different times that we can't really remove someone from being Shliach Sibur, now says the Ramah, there are scenarios, whether he's trying to daven in soiled clothing, whether he's singing Kaisha songs, these are causes to remove him from being Shliach Sibur. And finally, Shliach Sibur she'izkin rotz lamana is benoy l'seyel leprakim. We have a Shliach Sibur that he's become a bit old, and he wants to appoint a child to help him. Afal pi she'kol benoy ariv kikaylai. But the son doesn't have as nice a voice as the father. Im mimali mekayim b'shar dvarim. If that child is fulfilling his father's duties in other areas, not just that he wants to shtup him in over here to be chazin, but he is fulfilling his father's duties. The child comes before everyone else, and the tzibur cannot protest. So says the Mishnah Berurah over here in Sif 25b, dealing with the Shliach Sibur, that's a sheikh and a baydik, and his clothing is full of excrement and smelly atzayin. Shliach Sibur shemidei chel yoy la'ansay yesh lenakas diyostar mikrei leila. If there's someone, a Shliach Sibur, that can't keep his clothing clean because he has a sickness. It could be that in Yom Narayim we should force him to go to the mikvah to purify himself. Certainly he should remove the dirty clothing. And if he's not going to listen, then that is cause to remove him from his post. And says the Mishnah Berurah, not only sneaking in a gem over here, not only should this person change his clothing when he wants to daven, but says the Mishnah Berurah, when this person goes amongst everyone else, he's walking amongst people, he also should change his clothing. It's not appropriate. You shouldn't be walking around looking at someone and smelling. Says Mishnah Berurah, just like a Talmid Chacham is not allowed to walk around with dirty clothing. Even if the Shliach Sibur is not a Talmid Chacham, says the Mishnah Berurah, quoting the Pri Megadim, that as well is a reason he has to be clean. So Shliach Sibur is the status that we're seeing over here, that not only while he is davening, but even in general, he has to walk around dressed appropriately. And now the Mishnah Berurah Sif 25b continues discussing the Shliach Sibur that is singing Gaisha songs. Says Mishnah Berurah, this doesn't just mean English songs. This means music that the Goyim sing in their churches. Says the Bach, and it's specifically this. Says the Bach, it doesn't just mean any not Jewish song, or any song that at times they sing. But says the Bach, a song that is miyuchad to be sung in their churches. Continues Mishnah Berurah, possibly a Shliach Sibur Hashem Yom Kippurim. Someone that goes in the Gaisha courts cannot be a Shliach Sibur Hashem Yom Kippur Elam Kein Asa Tshuva, unless he does Tshuva. Says Mishnah Berurah, this is only if he doesn't have his friend's money in his hand. This is only if, meaning we know that you're not allowed to go to a Gaish court, and rather you have to go to a Bezdin. So over here, the Mishnah Berurah points out, but if their courts rule the same way, Even though the din Torah perhaps was the same, I shouldn't call it a din Torah, but the verdict in the Gaisha courts was the same verdict that we would have come to. Still says Mishnah Berurah that apostles him for the fact that he went to Gaish court for being Sheikh Sibur on the Yom Narayim. To avoid Gadol Misaratzmai. It is a travesty, it is a sin unto itself. Says Mishnah Berurah, except not, he's possible for the rest of the year in the Sheikh Sibur. Bemoans the Mishnah Berurah that perhaps nowadays the Nishtachach Isser Mikama Anashim Efshe Shushaygi Badavar. Says Mishnah Berurah, it's rampant. People are doing such a thing, and perhaps because it's so common, the person is considered a shaygig ein lepasli shenabaslim by going to the Gaish courts. As we find a Chesed Mishpat. As we've seen many times, the Sheikh Sibur for the Yom Narayim is on a higher level, and therefore says Mishnah Berurah, certainly for that we should be machmir. Sheikh Sibur that is a sheikh, and we find that by mistake he sells a treifa, or he's doing a different part, the removing the gita and nasha, and he also did it incorrectly. We don't remove him. We should appoint him initially to be a sheikh Sibur. If he does tshuva, you're not appointing him. Hey, bahagaz, we've seen already. A congregation that is divided the tefillah Shani Yom Kippur properly, and let's say one of the Baalei tefillah becomes sick. You can't put someone else. Meaning, the shliach Sibur that became sick, it's not his choice to go and appoint someone else, but rather the people choose. Quoting the Shari Ephraim. And we, in Sif 25b, Shliach Sibur Sheiskin, continues Mishnah Berurah explaining what happens when the Shliach Sibur gets elderly, and now he wants to appoint his son to take over. Says the Mishnah Berurah, similarly, says the Mishnah Berurah, for all their appointees, all their jobs, the son comes first. And here the Mishnah Berurah teaches us an incredible rule. And even if there are others that are greater than his son, since he's fulfilling the role of his father, and the Ramah pointed out that it has to be davka, specifically, that he's taking over for his father in other areas, then he gets the schus and the right to be Sheikh Sibur, and now the Mishnah Berurah is adding on for other jobs as well. Some say, says Mishnah Berurah, we have a Talmud Chacham that is a Marbet Tzayir, he gives Shurim. He's a judge. We do not say that his children come first. This, of course, is always a highly contested point. You have a Rav that's become elderly, and now he wants his son to take over for him. Does his son get the automatic right because his father was the Rav? And here we're seeing in the Mishnah Berurah that it is not a simple point. Firstly, and foremostly, is that it has to be only begins if the child is taking over for the father in other areas. And then the Mishnah Berurah teaches us that it is a point of debate. And we continue with the Mishnah Berurah Sif 25b Dalid, in which he explains V'roitze Kasvar Rashba Sham Hu Adin L'Chol Inyani Amenuyim, says the Rashba, all appointees Imroitze Amani She'echad She'isenu Oisei B'mini L'Prakim. If the person that has been appointed wants someone to help him at times, or it's just biyadai, because we're going to say it's only if he's fitting. He's fitting both in the job that he's doing and in Yerushalayim. Arif, and we conclude Sif 25b, in which Mishnah Berurah explains that even though the child does not have as nice of a voice, but says Mishnah Berurah, provided that this child is not shlo yehei koilei mishona, he doesn't have a distorted and messed up voice. And Mishnah Berurah concludes, perhaps reminding us that we do not remove a Sheikh Sibur for someone else who has a nicer voice. But if the Rav wants someone else, they both should serve together. And tomorrow, Mirza Hashem, we will be completing this Siman Nun Gimel with Sif Chavav and beginning Sif Nun